Hey everybody, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. I am really excited for today's conversation with my good friend Kevin Simmons. Kevin, how are you today?
Very good, very good. Excited as well. I felt like a failure. I had thoughts of not wanting to be here. What's the point? And I just had thoughts like, there is no point. I thought I had it all. Like I thought I had my faith, my family, and friends. I was planning. I had the provisions out to take my life.
How old were you when that happened?
26. I ultimately want to bring joy to the person that, is down and out. It's okay to make mistakes. Honestly, I would encourage mistakes. I learned that I can't be alone. And I've learned a lot about the woman's mind through my girlfriend and just how I've pursued her.
Give us the insight on the woman's mind.
Yeah.
As single men, we need it.
Women want pursuit. I'll just call myself out. I have not done a good job with that. I feel like with the man, there are three things we struggle with the most. I challenge men to truly look at what you want in life. If it is marriage, you have to pursue that woman. I will admit she did set up the first date, but after that.
Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to take a second and thank you for watching the Single Man Podcast. What started as a vision in October 2023 has grown into something more than I ever imagined. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, I'm only creating 52 episodes, and my goal is to reach as many single men as possible through these real stories. YouTube tells me that only 10% of those who watch the podcast are subscribed. It would tremendously help the podcast reach more men if you would scan the QR code on the screen right now or click the only link in this episode's description and subscribe on YouTube. Through the link, you can also join our email list, follow us on social media, or even donate so we can keep making an impact in single men's lives. My commitment to you is to use 100% of anything donated to continue improving the quality of the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, let's roll the episode. Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 29-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Hey everybody, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. I am really excited for today's conversation with my good friend Kevin Simmons. Kevin, how are you today?
Very good, very good. Excited as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you over, Kevin, and it's been really cool getting to know you the last 6 months or so now, and through the community in Atlanta. I guess we first met called Single Minded, which is a community in Atlanta for single men and women. So if you're in Atlanta and you're not already going to Single Minded, check that out. But Kevin and I first met through that because you were dating a girl who was part of Single Minded.
Yes.
And she's a friend of mine, and I've just heard nothing but great things about you, and getting to see you kind of firsthand at Single Minded, and some of the conversations we've had about faith and dating and how you're intentionally trying to pursue God through everything you're doing in your life and into dating. I know it's just going to really encourage all the single men that are listening today. So honored to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So little intro on Kevin, for everyone that doesn't know him. He is 29 years old, and he is originally from Johns Creek, Georgia, but now lives in Gainesville, Georgia, which is northern Georgia. What, like an hour north of Atlanta?
About an hour. Yeah.
Hour north of Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah, so not too bad.
Yeah. And he works as a pediatric speech pathologist.
Yeah.
Which
you
is,
had that right on.
yeah. Which is really cool. I have some friends that are speech pathologists, but I don't know that many that work like specifically with pediatrics. So that's like basically helping children learn how to speak better or like pronounce words, things like that.
Yeah, language, even going into feeding, using communication devices. Yeah, the whole nine.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What are the age ranges that you kind of see?
As early as 2 years old to I have a 21-year-old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
working on conversation skills and yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, it's
Wow.
been fun
And
for
you
sure.
also do sensory haircuts,
Yeah,
which is, you were telling me a little bit about it, like helping children feel comfortable getting their hair cut, and they
yeah,
could be like running around and somehow you're cutting their hair.
yeah, yeah. So I serve a couple kids that just have difficulty with haircuts. Families bring them in. Sometimes it's been like 2 or 3 years since they've gotten a haircut.
Whoa.
So I've had the blessing and opportunity to be that first haircut and help them out. What's called regulate their bodies. Provide bubbles, music, whatever it may be, just to provide a relaxing experience versus going to a barber shop, which I get, time is money, but they're just going to be held down and do the haircut. So I want to provide a experience that is not like that and makes it welcoming each time.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've seen some of your stuff as well. So Kevin, one of your hobbies, you just love like entertaining people and
Yeah.
making people laugh. And
Yeah.
so you have an account that you run. Is it just on Instagram or is it other platforms too that you post content?
Yeah, all platforms, YouTube, TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, singing SLP. I just love entertaining, like you said. So I'll post funny videos, inspirational videos.
Yeah.
It's mostly speech content, but I mean, honestly, there's videos that can relate to the working man and woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I've really been impressed with your content as well. Just how you do your editing style and everything is to encourage people, like have a great day. Here's what I'm doing to help people as well. So
Thank you.
yeah. Check out Kevin singing SLP.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then anything I left out you want people to know about you before we jump in?
No, I'm super excited to challenge some men out there that, these women out here, they're looking for marriage. So I think I don't have all the answers, but I think I have some good tidbits on, how I've been dating and pursuing, the love of my life.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So, before we jump into things, I like to just start off so people can get to know you on more of like a personal level. So this last week, what's been a high, a low of the week that you've been working through recently?
Yeah. I would say a high is with those sensory haircuts and content creation. I've been able to meet a lot of people. Like I had 2 haircuts today. So
Oh, wow.
just being able to serve and, use my talents, like it's a rewarding feeling. A parent hugged me because I'm able to offer free haircuts because people are donating to the cause. So it's been super, super great. On the downside, unfortunately, my body is taxed. I feel like there's something every single day. And, I don't get home until 8 or 9 o'clock some days, whether it be speech, haircuts, and trying to pursue, the girl I'm dating. So it's not a challenge, but I do notice like at the end of the week, I'm tired, not burnt out, but just tired.
Yeah.
So, God is working through that.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for making the time to be here today.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it.
So we'd love to jump into things and just have you share a little bit about growing up and at what point did you come to know Jesus and what he had personally done for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian household. My mom and dad, they were both raised Christian. They would always have my siblings up at 9 in the morning, even earlier than that, to make sure we went to the first service. Like we were always at church. And so I knew of God and I knew of his works, but I didn't truly know of him. And so I started asking questions. My grandmother was a big influence in my life. She would have us read scripture. She would have us sing old hymns, and she was always serving in the church. And so like it just like people tell you, be a model, emulate Christ in that way. You don't really have to speak to someone. People start to wonder, like, why is she having such a good life? What is this force that is awakened in her? And that's, Jesus Christ, that's the Holy Spirit. So just like that, she would just model. She was the sweetest lady. And so through that, I was asking questions like, why is she so happy? Like,
why is grandma always joyful?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, she played a big influence in my life, and I was able to get baptized before she passed. And I know one of the things that her friends had told me at her funeral, they said, Kevin, we knew your grandmother. She loved you very much, and we want to tell you that God has put it on our hearts to tell you that you're gonna minister to people. And when at that young age, you just think like, oh man, I'm gonna be a pastor, but like I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. Like I don't want to go into ministry.
How old were you when this happened?
This was 9 years old.
9 years old. Okay.
I love going to church. I love learning about the word, but you ask any kid what they want to be. It's very rare do you hear like, oh, I'm going to be a pastor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is that what they told you? Like you were going to be a pastor, or you were just going to minister to people?
The first one said I was going to pastor, and then the other one, ironically enough, a couple years down the road, when my grandfather had passed, someone else said minister. So it was in that realm where I was like, oh man, I have to be a pastor. Wow. It's not like I wouldn't drop everything to do that, but I just thought I would want to be a doctor, like I've always wanted to be. So at that early age, I knew of God, was asking questions. So skipping ahead to high school, my faith was in God. I was in FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, was getting involved with the church, church outings. But again, it was almost like that early age of baptism. Like I knew of God, but I wasn't understanding like the force that that my grandmother had. And I just wasn't understanding like why she used to be so happy. Like why was I not that happy? And we'll talk about it later on, but one of the things I noticed in myself when I was playing baseball, I was making it an idol. I was trying to fill a need that I had, or I was wanting, and that need wasn't baseball, it wasn't porn, it wasn't lust, it wasn't the things that I was like chasing outside of that. It was, I needed God. I truly needed to seek him, and like my prayers, I can remember it was just like, all right, God, thank you for this day. And then I was jumping in bed. Like I wasn't, there wasn't a relationship, And like I said, we'll talk about it when we're dating women, or for women that are listening, dating men. It truly is like the pursuit. Yeah, it's great. Like everybody loves the pursuit, but like, what do we do when we get there? Like when we're in prayer, when we're at church, like, all right, that's great. You made it to church, but like, where's the relationship? And I just loved the pursuit. I loved, meeting God, but like, I wasn't truly trying to understand him and get in his word.
Sitting in the presence.
Yeah. So baseball was an idol for me, and quickly was humbled. Quickly humbled, and did not have any scholarships. I felt like a failure, and God kind of knocked me down from that peg, and I again started back on my faith journey. Got with some mentors, and it was a season of depression. Like I was 17, 18, just trying to understand the next steps in my life, because I had made that an idol, and I was thinking that that was the end all be all. Like that was the way I was gonna serve God. So it was like, God, how am I gonna serve you now? You know?
I'm gonna be like an MLB player or something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So it was cool to see how God intervened in that, and where the enemy is telling me that I'm a failure in this facet of my life. He was trying to make it bleed into other areas of my life, and it's like, yeah, you're a failure. You're not going to be a good boyfriend. You're not going to be a good scholar. You're not good enough for this area in your life, so you're not going to ever be good enough. There's different ways that depression occurs, but I know for a lot of us, speaking like that hit home because it was like a domino effect of, man, maybe I'm not good enough.
I didn't make it to college to play baseball, so I'm not gonna amount to anything almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it all starts with that unintentionally, but I think we all have idols, and it's like, honestly, recognizing it is the first step. And then, all right, what can we do from that? And if that's convicting, I think that's good. That's a good thing because obviously we love God, but I think that there's certain idols in our life that we don't like put a magnifying glass to. And when we do, yeah, like I remember that moment, it hit hard. I was like, oh man, I'm not loving God as much as I'm loving baseball right now. And as soon as I recognized that, yeah, I think that flipped the script. And I was really paying attention to the word and like what God was calling me to. And I look back, I miss baseball, but like I mean, my life would have turned out completely different.
Yeah.
And, would I be involved in the church if I continued to have success in one area where I was just glorifying that rather than glorifying God? So, yeah. And then the last part of my story, in the latter years in grad school, I continued to go to church, was involved in church up in Radford, Virginia, where I went to school.
Okay.
And yeah, things were good. And then towards the end, where I was getting ready to graduate, again, I just kind of hit a block. I was like, man, I'm doing well. Grades are great. Have good friends. Involved in the church. Like I'm getting in the word. But I think I wasn't recognizing that I was just going through the motions. And one day, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. The enemy was like, "You're not good enough." And the perfectionist in me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that 95 I got on that test, yeah, that's not good enough." And almost like OCD tendencies, I seriously would think about that for like weeks. And it was frustrating, and it just built up to a point where I had thoughts of not wanting to be here. Thoughts that like, I missed that point. I missed that, A grade that I needed or whatever. So like, what's the point? And I just had thoughts like, there is no point. So, the enemy definitely works hard. And I want to point that out too for the listener that is struggling. I was in a season where I didn't have a roommate. I would just go back to my dorm and study. So like, if you're in that season of sadness, find community. Like that is the biggest thing. I would just tell my friends like, oh no, I'm good. Like, y'all hang out. Like, I'll just go back to the dorm. And that's for the Christian. That's for the non-believer. We all know that like we cannot go through life without community. Like it's just not possible. And I thought that I could, being the perfectionist, but I hit that low point, and I thought I had it all. Like I thought I had my faith, my family, and friends, and in a sense I did, but the enemy is going to work so hard, especially in isolation. So, I remember that day I was like, man, I do not want to be here. But God, gave me a song, and one of my favorite songs is Joy in the Morning. And a lot of my tattoos reference scripture and song. And, the song talks about, the nights there's going to be weeping, there's going to be tears, but in the morning, joy will come. And that's why, like, on my social media, on anytime like I meet with someone, like I just hope my presence brings joy, because it's like in life, God has granted us with so much, and I try to find that joy. So anyway, that song was playing, and I kind of got out of that hole, talked to mentors, talked to people that were close to me.
When you say that song was playing, so maybe what was that like? Like are you saying you were thinking about committing suicide and then somehow that song was playing? And
Yeah.
Or what was that like?
Yeah. So it was, and I won't go as detailed, but it was like I was planning. I had the provisions out to take my life, and
Wow.
before it actually occurred, like I was on my hands and knees. I remember like weeping, and I was like, God, like why? Like why is this happening? Like, and we talk about spiritual warfare. Interestingly enough, I remember in a Bible study, I don't want to mess up the stats, but look it up. I think there was a poll, and they polled 100 Christians, and I think 50%, it was an alarming percentage, did not believe that there is spiritual warfare. And, and that's scary because there is spiritual warfare. God is battling, and, he's in the trenches for us. And so I say that because, I mean, it was seriously spiritual warfare, Carlton. I mean, like there's just no other way to go about it. I was like crying. I was like, God, the enemy like has me, like, please, like take these thoughts. I don't want these thoughts. And so, before I did anything, I just remember finding worship, just trying to like flood my head with, just joy. And so that song had played, and it was just a reminder for me. I've heard it before, but in that moment it was a reminder that I am down, like I'm almost down and out. But like it was God's way, I feel, of saying like, hold on, child, like I've got you.
Wow.
And so I mean those thoughts would come about every so often after the fact, but I know that like after that happened, I think there was a fear, there was a or not a fear, because we shouldn't have any fear, but it was more of like I don't want that. I don't want those thoughts, because my God has a bigger purpose for my life. So, and I think one message at Passion talked about it, where Louis talks about, God is greater than any of our problems. Like our problem may be this big, but like our God is greater. So we're always going to overcome that. So, got back into church, and have always been trying to glorify his name through that. And
how old were you when that happened? And thanks for sharing that too, and being vulnerable. I'm sure that will be encouraging to some people that are listening. So like, how old were you when that happened?
Honestly, not too long ago. It was when I was graduating, so 26.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's 26 was when I went through the whole phase of dating and like hitting rock bottom myself.
Yeah.
And like, why are you doing this to me, God? But then I don't even know if I really believe in you. So that kind of forced me into trying to figure out, what do I really believe about God?
Yeah.
So I think well, one, praise God that nothing happened. Like you
Thank
didn't
you.
go through with it. And now knowing you 3 years later, I would have never thought that you had that as part of your story in your past. But that's just how, God redeems people, right?
Yeah.
Like God will redeem
For sure.
your story and your nature in situations like that so that you can now freely talk about it to help other people that are going through it.
Yeah.
Where the enemy would have led like, yeah, we don't want Kevin, he's going to be a force. So let's continue to flood his mind with these thoughts that
No, you're
he's
spot on.
worthless.
You're spot
There's
on.
nothing for him to live for. So yeah, praise God that didn't happen.
Thank you. No, you hit a great point. Again, I'm gonna butcher the saying, but what is it when like you're doing so well as a Christian, as a non-believer, you're doing so well. I think that's when the enemy attacks the hardest because he doesn't want God's light to shine through.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of like butchered that, but you hit that head on. Like the enemy does not want to see people succeed. So
Right.
if you're going through a tough time, just remember that like God has never left our side. It's just now we got to be like on high alert. Recognize that spiritual warfare and again, like I talked about, magnify where those idols are, magnify like what we can do, and bring community in to that to help support you.
Yeah. One thing that I want to say, if someone's going through something like suicidal thoughts or depression now, and you have a relationship with Jesus already, is to keep your eyes on Jesus through that.
Yeah.
Don't keep your eyes on the thoughts or like the problem or the issues that are presenting, but keep your eye on what God says about you, what's in the Bible, because that's how you can get through it. Because you can cut through the lies of the enemy by just focusing on what God says.
Exactly.
It makes me think about when Jesus was walking on water and he called Peter out of the boat to then walk to him.
Yeah.
And Peter is able to walk while he's keeping his eyes fixed on Jesus. But then as soon as he looks at the waves around him and the water and what am I doing out here on the water? Like this isn't possible.
Yeah.
He starts to sink. So yeah, just keeping your eyes fixed on God and like the face of God, like God's holiness and who he is specifically. So just want to encourage people around that.
No, that's good.
So 26, this happens. You're in Virginia still?
Yes.
And then you at some point come to the Atlanta area and start working, or what was that process like?
Yeah. So, got through that process, again, had great community to hold me accountable, and graduated, and I loved Virginia. I loved that area that I was at. I call a lot of them family, but I believe that God, had something here in Atlanta for me. And, I look at the sensory haircuts. I mean, it's definitely where I'm at a point where I could have stayed in Virginia. I could have stayed wherever. But I feel like God had put something on my heart to move back home to Johns Creek and, found a job near Johns Creek, Georgia, and kind of started that avenue of the singing SLP and bringing joy. So like in a sense, it's content creation for people, but it like kind of wrapping it back up to my grandmother. A lot of people are like, man, I find your videos awesome. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. Like, yes, I have speech therapy content, but I ultimately want to bring joy to the person that, is down and out, who feels like, man, they're going through life and this thing called life alone, but they're not. And I put a smile on my face, but I'm as real as you in front of me, and we all go through struggles. And like you said, you would have never thought that I went through seasonal depression, went through anxiety, but I just hope to just like you're doing, bring a message to people that you don't have to do it alone. And so anyway, these videos have created honestly more joy for me than the other person on the screen. Like I love it. So it, in a sense, the people y'all have given me joy and hope for this world, and like just continued friendship, love, laughter. Like that's all it's about.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kevin, for sharing all of that. So I want to have you talk specifically, let's say you could go back and talk to yourself when you were 25, 26, going through that season. If you could somehow go back and talk to that version of yourself, what would you tell them? Or maybe someone's listening that's going through that type of thinking right now. What would you tell them specifically?
Yeah. I think specifically looking at perfectionism, I would tell my younger self that it's okay to make mistakes. Honestly, I would encourage mistakes. I read this book, I think it's by, Ryan Leach, and it's called Chasing Failure. One of my favorite books. It's a short excerpt, but if you're listening, go get it. It's like $10. But he talks about literally chasing failure. He tried out for an NBA team, didn't get it, knew he wasn't going to get it, but through that, he learned more about himself. He learned some things that he can work on health-wise for himself. So that's just one example. But for myself, I know that if I could go back in time, like I would not sweat the small stuff, especially those grades. And like I was applying it to life, I was so stuck on, man, if I don't make this 100, then yeah, my grade is gonna go down. Like, my teachers are gonna be like, "Did you even study?" Instead of actually looking at like the whole theme of it, like the learning behind it. And I know you for a fact, like you're not gonna ask me like, "Hey, what'd you get on that?"
What'd you get on that exam 3 back? Yeah.
Right. So, instead of doing that, I think I would have told myself like actually learn, and just applying it to life. Yeah, make mistakes, but like learn from it. Just like with baseball, like with my grades, I was able to look at it and I'm like, okay, I'm pursuing this thing, and it's obviously something that is a big thing in my life, but like what's missing? And God was missing in baseball. So I was able to learn from that. And again, we skip forward. It's a scary thing to talk about. I know that there's some listeners out there that, are going through depression. But just like with me, I'm like, all right, I went through something. It was a struggle, but like, are we going to use that and just continue on in life? Almost like I was telling you about, just be stagnant, going through the motions, or are you going to learn from that? And I wouldn't say that's a failure, or I told you about the book, but I wouldn't say a failure, but it's a learning opportunity. I don't want people to go through life and especially hit that like that bottom, and it's like, man, I'm stuck and I'm gonna stay stuck. You don't have to stay stuck. God is definitely there to pick you back up, but again, it's looking at that situation and it's like, okay, I learned that I can't be alone. I shouldn't be alone in isolation when it comes to porn, when it comes to anything that is trying to fulfill that need, that hole. All right, so I need community. Oh, I can't get up in the morning. I'm so depressed. Like, okay, so let's learn, maybe go to bed at 10, you know what I mean? Instead of midnight. Have the blinds open. There's always something to learn about yourself. If when you're going through a hard time, and it's just pretty much magnifying it, like understanding that God is trying to tell you something.
That's
so
good.
It's just for us to hold ourselves accountable and like, move out of that hole.
Yeah, that's good. One thing, and it's even having me think of recognizing patterns in your life.
Yeah.
And if it's leading you to the same outcome, then working backwards, like what started the pattern or what started getting to the outcome.
Yeah.
Instead of just, I'm depressed, like help me not be depressed anymore. Like, why am I thinking that way? Is it because I'm not, spending time with friends? Is it because I'm spending all my time alone? Is it because I'm not getting into the Bible? Like, things like that. And then you can work backwards that way rather than I'm depressed, I need to not be depressed. It's like, what is the action that's going to actually help you solve that?
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's good.
So want to transition now into talking a little bit about dating.
Yeah.
This being the Single Man podcast.
For sure.
We talked to guys about how they came to faith, advice for their younger self, and then how they're navigating dating. So 29 now, and you're dating someone now. How long have y'all been dating?
About 4 months.
Okay.
But she's the one. I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she's the one.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I guess would love to have you start maybe talking about, as you've been following Jesus, maybe since you were 26, let's say, since that depression, suicidal thoughts happened, you moved back to Atlanta. What's dating been like as a Christian since then?
Yeah. So moving back to Atlanta, I think first couple of months I was just focused on, we have what's called a clinical fellowship in speech therapy. 9 months, you're supervised, but you're in the real world. You're doing work. So I think I was more so focused on that than going out on dates. But, a couple months into it, I started to, just remember that, like, okay, I'm getting close to that age where marriage is a thing. And I, even at a young age, I always wanted marriage. Like I just, wanted marriage. I thought that is a beautiful thing. And so would start to go out on dates. My mom would have like people she thought would be great for me.
Oh yeah.
But the parents, man, I don't know. They sometimes they miss their mark. But tried the dating apps, and the dating apps, I'll tell part of the story, but I think that they're good. They can be good. Obviously I met the girl I'm dating on a dating app.
Okay.
But I also met her through like word of mouth. So it was kind of like a split thing there. But the reason I have hesitations for dating apps is just it's honestly just like the people there. Like I think people have the right idea, but it's just never like put into practice. So what I mean by that is I remember I would have a good couple of dates, but on some dating prompts, it's like, what are you looking for? Marriage. And, there's a couple girls I dated, and 2 or 3 dates later, it was like, no, I'm not ready for marriage. Like, it's not you. But, and again, if we go back to our example of like looking at, it's not a failure. Like, all right, what did I learn about myself? But still it can be discouraging because it's like, man, you just spent all this time and effort
invested
into, so on the flip side of that, like you do have good people out there on the dating apps. There's always good people, but good intention people. The girlfriend I'm with right now, and I think it just goes to show that if you want to go out on the dating apps, like for sure, because there may be one that really is like a true intentioned individual, loves God. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We can put, loves God on our dating profiles, but like, we we don't really know the actions of somebody until the actual date. So I mean, I'd always encourage to try the dating apps, but just to, just to ask the right questions, before that first date. You say on your profile, you love God. Like, tell me about your faith journey. And I know that sometimes can be a lot all at once, but maybe set up a FaceTime date or something like that
before the first date. You'd want to know about their story, you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think I did not know of my girlfriend's full story before the first date, but
Okay.
I think it definitely is trial and error, because some of the dates I wanted to know of this person before I actually went out on the date, but other times it was cool to be in a moment where it's like sporadic and like, okay, oh, you go to this church. Because then once you get to that date and it's like, everything, then it can be like, all right, I already know this all about you.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah,
Maybe I feel like for me, like I'm not on dating apps, but I think that if I was on dating apps, I would want to know somewhat of their, maybe like a little bit about their story, or like, okay, actually be able to articulate how you're involved at your church, or like what are you doing to actually follow Jesus. Like, see some of their fruit, basically, because anybody could say that they're a Christian. I used to have Christian on my dating app profiles before I was really following Jesus too. So I wish a lot of people like shared that more openly, maybe, or it was more obvious up front. And I think word of mouth is good too. Like you touched on that a little bit, but being able to have somebody vouch for you, almost like, oh yeah, I know Kevin, like he's great, or like, oh yeah, I know Carlton, yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. So that's another thing too. So when you met the girl you're dating now, that you said you kind of got set up that way?
Yeah. And before I get into that, I just thought of, with the dating apps, with dating in general, I think a challenge I would like to promote to men, especially, is that yes, the dating experience has definitely evolved. I mean, I'm not saying the days of walking up to the door with flowers and it's like, hey, I would love to take you out are gone, but they're definitely not. There's sprinkles, the dating experience has evolved. So now it's like for us as men to challenge ourselves in how can we evolve with it. With the dating apps, okay, and I've learned a lot about the woman's mind through my girlfriend and just how I've pursued her.
Yeah, give us the insight on the woman's mind.
Yeah.
As single men, we need it.
So I remember matching with her, and our friend had set us up on a blind date a year ago, and long story short, it didn't work out. I dropped the ball, pretty much. And we texted, but again, I dropped the ball, skipped to a year later, matched with her on a dating app. And so as she told me later on, as a man, my pride gets in the way. And I was just like, okay, she lives in Atlanta. She knows that area. I'll let her do her thing. When I asked her out on the date, but looking back on it, I definitely dropped the ball again because, I mean, that was just lazy of me. I don't know of Atlanta that much, but like I have a phone. So, that's what I talk about with evolving. Women want pursuit. Like, I mean, she's told me to lead, and she challenged me in that way to lead, whether it be picking a restaurant, whether it be even more recently, to get into her mind I've been meeting up with her family, and we're getting to a point where, yeah, I do see marriage with her. And so we're trying to get families together, and she's like, you can set up these things too. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're right. You know what I mean? So
What do you mean set up these things?
set up family events, set up
Okay.
dinners and hangouts with family, friends too.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll just call myself out. I have not done a good job with that. I mean, plain and simple. So I think
You're like, we should get the families together, but then not coordinating it or something, you're saying? Like,
yeah, so she'll plan out and like invite me to family functions.
Oh, okay.
I just have been dropping the ball and
Doing the
not
same.
Right.
I see,
So
okay.
I need to do better in that sense, and so I was going to talk about this. So when I talk about evolving, I feel like with the man, there are three things we struggle with the most. One, obviously being porn. That is a definite struggle. And the other two relate to it by one being feeling like a burden. So like when I pursue my girlfriend, I've told her I don't want to be a burden. Like, and I think being in singleness, I had that mindset where I would go out on dates and I wouldn't text. Like, of course not. Because it's like, oh man, I don't want to be a burden. She's gonna go back to her girlfriends and be like, man, this guy was texting me right after the date, and that's just the mindset, at least for me. So I don't know if there's some single men out there that are like, man, I don't want to be a burden. And then with that, the third thing, which all tie together to porn and why men especially have to be held accountable, have accountability partners, but is rejection. I mean, I would go out on dates. I feel like the dating apps were an easy crutch for me to be like, all right, I'll text this girl for a couple times, and then if I feel any sense of her not interested, I'm gonna back out because I don't want to be rejected.
yeah.
And I think as men, when we pursue women, my girlfriend has told me like it's a big challenge for us to step up because one, and I talk about porn because when rejection happens, when feeling like a burden happens, I used to go into this corner where it's like, all right, well, I have porn to fill.
Porn won't reject me.
Right. Exactly. And,
yeah.
and I think for us to be held accountable, we have to have accountability partners, good men in our corner, but also just challenge ourselves to, I mean, seriously send that text. Like, I mean, there's going to be rejection. There's going to be those feelings, but the women you find yourself with, one, she's going to help you. She's, I mean, it's up to us to hold ourselves accountable with porn, but with that, I know, also shout out real quick. It's called Every Man's Battle. It's a book about porn, and just how to overcome it. It's a great book, Every Man's Battle. But yes, the woman you love, you're not going to want to go to porn. You're going to love her. And then two, when it comes to feeling like a burden, you're going to, that woman in your life is not going to think you're a burden. But like, you won't know that until you take that chance and, pursue that woman. And then three, rejection in a relationship. There may be rejection where it's like, okay, well, your schedule is busy. My schedule is busy. No, I can't come to that family function. I have something. So there's going to be rejection, but that rejection won't hurt knowing that that individual loves you. So yeah, all that to say, I challenge men to truly look at what you want in life. If it is marriage, then you have to pursue that woman. Like, my girlfriend has done a good job with letting me lead in that way, and telling me that, like, hey, I'm not gonna do it. And I think a lot of women are frustrated. Yeah, it's not for them to set up the date and set up the family functions. Like, as Christian men, we got to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to stand up. So
maybe just practically speaking, so you could help specifically single men that are Christians. What does that look like? Okay, so you all had been set up on a blind date a year in advance, and then you dropped the ball. You said you rematched on a dating app, and then just like practically speaking, what did it look like? Leading through now being 4 months in.
So I think first thing that pops in my head is setting up the date. And I will admit she did set up the first date, but after that, I definitely challenged myself because I want to treat her like a queen. Challenge myself to set up the next dates and understand that like we need to be texting or communicating in that way, calling. And I know that sounds old school, but like calling up a girl and saying, hey, I had a great time. Would love to take you out again. And
does she know you're on the podcast today?
She does. She does. Yeah.
Let's call her up now.
That'd be great, right?
Just communicate. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's a huge thing because in my mind, I look back a couple years ago. I seriously would put down my phone and I would wait for the girl. I would seriously just wait, and I would be like, I'll wait for her to tell me we had a good day.
She's gonna text,
right? And it's like, why do we do that? And I know my girlfriend speaking, I know that's so frustrating because as men we're called to lead, but when we do something like that, it sounds small, but it's like, I'm telling you, they're going back to their girlfriends and they're like, yeah, dude didn't text me. So it's like, where are we going out on a date? Does he like me? So definitely challenge the men out there to, be as communicative as you can and lay down everything from the date to what happens next after that. And I think there's some good messages with Ben Stewart's Single, Dating, Engaged, and Married. Tell straight up, like, second date, hey, I like where this is going. I mean, you don't have to tell your whole love story and say like, hey, I see us getting married, but you can say like, these are my intentions.
I like want to be married one day.
Yeah. And this is great. I would
getting
love
to know you.
Right. Exactly. So I think that's super important, the intentions behind it. And then another practical thing is just, again, I mean, like the pursuit. I can't say that enough. Like women, they want us to lead. I mean, like plain and simple. So that feeling of being rejected or feeling like you're a burden, you're not going to be a burden to the person that likes you. So, you have to take that shot though. So, I would just encourage, men to, communicate, be intentional. And I try the dating apps. It doesn't hurt to try the dating apps and, get within the right community. I've had a couple of guy friends, tell me that they're struggling. They're not finding the right people. So again, it's like magnifying. All right, let's look at our community. Maybe go to Single Minded, try out different areas in your life and see where that leads you to maybe not the right person, but maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a confidant that leads you to that right person, which honestly happened with my girlfriend and I. So just continue to explore your community and be encouraged in that way.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, amazing, Kevin.
Thank you.
Last thing on dating, and then we'll wrap up. So you said, okay, 4 months, and I think you said earlier she's the one or something like
Yeah.
that, right? So maybe as you've been pursuing her and dating the last 4 months, how did you come to that realization or that decision or that
Yeah.
thought? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
why do you feel like that she's the one?
No, that's a good question. I think when we look at dating, society has it where it's like, all right, a year and a half,
Yeah.
then engagement, or maybe 8 months or what have you. But and we've talked about it. I think the connection and the love for one another is so strong. One, of course, because of the foundation in God. We've always talked about how yes, this thing is great, but we've always been singular on our track to find someone that aligns with us. And when we do line up, it's like, wow, okay, not only do you love God, but you love me. Like, that's really cool. So again, encouraging men out there, women out there, that like keeping singular, and then uniting, like that's the greatest thing. So not so much to get in your head where it's like, okay, I really like this person, and I love that they love God, but I'm gonna swerve early and try to pretty much change my views, change my faith, and my character because I love this idea
Of them.
Yeah. So, and my girlfriend and I have talked about that and like divulged the idea and like taking it away where, yeah, I do love her, but I don't love the idea of her. I don't love the idea of marriage. Like I love this individual person, first and foremost because of God, like the creation that He's made, and I think ultimately that's what has set us apart from like 10 months down the road or whatever. But it honestly, it was pretty early on. It was like, wow, I love you. Like this is good. And it's like, why wait?
Yeah.
So yeah, more to come.
Okay.
More to come. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing.
Thank
Wow.
you.
That's awesome, Kevin. Yeah. Super grateful for the way that God's worked in your story and your dating life. And you probably weren't showing up to that blind date a year ago. Like, oh, maybe this could be
I know, right?
my wife, I guess. Right. But yeah, well, I guess we'll see what's to come.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Last couple questions and we'll wrap up. So do you have a Bible verse for your life or this season of life that you'd want to encourage single men with?
Yeah, one of my favorite books is Matthew 25, verse 21, and just talks about being a good and faithful servant. And, we were talking about it before we got on, but I think it relates to all things in life, friendships, relationships, careers, but just like doing everything and excelling in what God has given you. With your gifts and just like we talked about with the podcast, like well done, Carlton, creating a platform for people so that we can serve because God calls us to serve. And, at the end of the day, in that message, it talks about God saying, well done, good and faithful servant. And, that's the message, joy, and then also going on that fashion of living well and doing well by Him. So, in dating, to the men out there, and again, the women that are listening out there, continue to do well in dating. Go out on that date. I know that it can be discouraging, like I told you, with going out on 2 or 3 dates and then it's like, oh no, I'm not ready. But again, you learn so much about yourself and you're also serving God through that. And maybe that individual isn't ready, or maybe, as much as it hurts, maybe they don't like you, but you not only learn more about yourself, what you want, what you don't like, but also it gives them a glimpse of like, wow, that's Christian dating like that. Okay, I like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can be a part of someone's story. And I know it sounds discouraging, but it really is encouraging to know that you're part of someone's story, and bringing them towards Christ because of the way you've done well and served. So
Yeah.
Go out on that date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. Last thing, ask everybody this. So let's say there's single men specifically that are listening that don't have a relationship with Jesus, or they're exploring faith, Christianity. What do they really believe? And somehow they've sat here and listened to this whole episode, right?
Yeah.
What's one thing you would want them to specifically take away from this conversation with Kevin? Okay, make a note in their phone.
Yeah.
Set a reminder for next week, heading into the weekend.
Yeah.
One piece of wisdom from Kevin Simmons.
I think I would just go back to our talking point about that missing piece. If you feel there's something, it may not be something missing, but you just have a deep feeling, just like I did. And yeah, it's unexplainable, but I think, Carlton, you understand it. I feel like a host of listeners understand that there's a feeling that just doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
That feeling is God calling you. I mean, it really is. And your season of wonder, and your season of curiosity, and your season of the enemy trying to attack, that feeling is most definitely the Holy Spirit stirring. Yearning, God is yearning for you to come to him. I mean, like, it truly is. And so I hope the listener out there can be encouraged by that, knowing that that's not a feeling of isolation. You're not alone in this. That's the Holy Spirit moving, and God just wants you closer. So hopefully to the non-believer that they reach out to a friend, they DM Carlton, they text a friend, just asking like, hey, what is this feeling? So that we can get you to church, we can get you to community, just to lift you up in that way.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Amazing, Kevin. Yeah, if that's you and you're listening and you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, or you want to learn more about faith, would love for you to DM the Single Man Podcast on Instagram, and even maybe Kevin, like your account they could reach out to too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The singing SLP.
Singing SLP.
I'll put it in the I'll put it on the screen here now and in the description. So if you've been listening, you can check it out too. So yeah, super grateful for you, Kevin. Thanks so much for coming on, sharing some of your wisdom and your story, and just how God's worked in your life. And now I'm excited to continue to stay friends and see what the future has in store for you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kevin. If you did, we'd love for you to leave a comment below on YouTube and Spotify with one thing you're taking away, or where you're tuning in from. Would love to hear from you. And if you think a friend would be encouraged by Kevin's story in this conversation, would love for you to text them the link and tell them, hey, check out the Single Man Podcast. Check out this conversation with Kevin. I think it'd really encourage you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. This has been Carlton French. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. If someone you know would benefit from this week's episode, I'd love for you to text them the link and invite them to listen. You never know how a simple invitation could change someone's life. We'll be back next Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a new episode. Until then, check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube, and you can engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.